The unlikely Bond jungle was a place where few ventured. Dark, dense, and full of life that could kill in an instant. Massive trees with leaves that could cut through skin, plants that could paralyze you with just a touch, and predators that made even the bravest hesitate. It was the perfect place for an expedition, if you had the courage. And courage, that was something humanity had in abundance. That's why they sent them humans into the heart of the danger. The mission was simple: observe and learn about the deadliest predators on the planet. The humans, however, had an edge the other species didn't. The one thing they understood better than any alien race. Survival. Dr. Ethan Harper, a biologist, stood at the edge of the jungle. His heart pounded in his chest as he scanned the dense greenery, knowing that within it, the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy stalked their prey. But today, he was not prey. Today, he would learn. Behind him, his team was already preparing. Their equipment, but it wasn't their equipment that held the real power. It was the silent figure walking just behind them. Their bodyguard Yarek was a human, just like them, but there was something different about him. He was tall, with eyes that never seemed to blink. His movements were slow, deliberate. He wore no armor, just a simple outfit of muted colors, but his presence alone seemed to command the attention of anyone around him. Yarek wasn't just any bodyguard. He had been trained for the impossible, and today, his task was clear: protect Dr. Harper and the team at all costs. They entered the jungle, moving quietly but quickly, the dense foliage swallowing their steps. Yarek stayed ahead, his eyes scanning every movement in the shadows. The rest of the team followed closely, but no one was as alert as Jarek. An hour into their journey, they came to a clearing. Ethan knelt down, studying the ground, when suddenly a low growl rumbled through the air. It was deep, menacing, and close. The air seemed to freeze. The team tensed, hands instinctively moving toward weapons they hadn't used in years. But Yarek, without a word, stepped in front of them, his body blocking the rest of the group. A massive shape emerged from the trees, a creature so terrifying that even Ethan, a man who had studied predators for years, felt his heart race. The creature was almost as tall as a building, its fur thick and matted, claws as long as knives. Its eyes were predatory, focused as it moved with grace. Its gaze fixed on Yarek. The team froze, unsure whether to run or fight. But Yarek didn't move. Instead, he slowly raised his hand, palm open. The massive creature, which should have been a killing machine, paused. It tilted its head, sniffing the air as though it was uncertain. Then, in a movement too fast for the eye to follow, the creature lowered its head, dropping a small, trembling cub onto the ground in front of Yarek. Yarek didn't flinch. He dropped to one knee, his hand gently brushing against the cub's fur, soothing it. The massive predator didn't growl, didn't show any signs of aggression. It simply stood there, watching, waiting. The team was speechless. The predator, a creature known to tear apart anything that dared cross its path, was trusting a human with its young. Yarek spoke softly, his voice calm and reassuring, though the team could barely hear him. "It's okay, they trust us." He reached out, touching the cub's small, trembling body. The cub's fur was warm under his touch, and it let out a small, contented purr. The predator growled once more, low and gentle, but it did not move. It watched the human, its eyes now filled with something different. There was no anger, no hunger, only ... understanding. Slowly, The massive creature stepped back, turning its head slightly to ensure the cub was safe, and then, in a final glance at Yorick, it retreated into the jungle, its movements graceful, yet powerful. The team was left in stunned silence. Ethan could hardly believe his eyes. Did that just happen? He asked in disbelief, his voice trembling. Yorick stood, looking back at the team. It's not just about trust, he said quietly. It's about understanding. These creatures are more than just predators. They know the value of protecting what matters. For the first time, Ethan understood the unspoken bond between Yorick and the creatures. Yorick wasn't just their protector. He had become part of the jungle itself, attuned to the creatures in a way that aliens never could be. The cub, still lying near Yorick's feet, blinked up at him. The tension in the air lifted, replaced by a strange sense of peace. The other members of the team slowly approached, eyes wide. One of them, Anna, whispered, "Why did it trust you?" Yorick knelt, gently picking up the cub. Because, like all creatures, it understands strength. And strength isn't just in power or size. It's in the ability to protect, to keep what's important safe. For the next few hours, the team continued their journey, moving through the jungle with a newfound respect for Yorick and the creatures of this planet. They were no longer just threats to be feared, but beings to be understood, as they camped for the night. Ethan looked at Yorick, sitting quietly near the fire with the cub in his arms. The human bodyguard had earned the trust of the galaxies. Most dangerous creatures, not with force, but with understanding. And in that moment, Ethan realized the truth humans weren't just survivors. They were protectors. Asterisk, the human protector. The jungle was alive with sounds, the whispers of leaves in the wind, the distant calls of strange creatures, and the soft hum of insects that could have been deadly in the wrong moment. But tonight, everything was quieter. The team had settled into camp, the fire crackling softly in the center. The cub, nestled against Yorick's side, slept soundly, its tiny breaths rising and falling in rhythmic peace. Ethan sat near the fire, watching the human bodyguard with a mix of awe and curiosity. Yorick didn't speak much. In fact, he barely spoke at all. But his presence was undeniable. The way he moved, calm, assured, always alerted, the way the predators of the jungle reacted to him, was nothing short of extraordinary. "Do it," Ethan asked quietly, breaking the silence. Yorick didn't look up from where he gently stroked the cub's fur. "Do what? How do you connect with them?" "The predators. I've never seen anything like it. They trust you, more than they trust any of us." Yorick paused for a moment, his fingers still brushing against the cub's soft coat. Then, slowly, he spoke. "It's not about being better or stronger. It's about respect, understanding them, their instincts, their needs. They're not just mindless killers, they're protectors, too. They fight to survive, but they also fight to protect what matters." Ethan frowned. "But they're predators. They kill builders. They kill. How can they be protectors?" Yorick's eyes met his, calm but intense. "Survival isn't just about taking. It's about ensuring that your kind survives. They hunt to feed, but they also care for their young. They teach them to be strong, to be aware of their surroundings, to protect those they care about. That's not just instinct. That's purpose." The rest of the team had gathered around, drawn in by the conversation. Anna, the youngest member of the group, leaned forward, curiosity etched on her face. "But why trust us with their cubs? Why trust you, of all people?" Jorek's expression softened as he looked down at the cub, its tiny paws twitching in its sleep. "Because," he said slowly, "we're not as different as we seem. All we need is to show that we understand their world. The way they protect, the way they fight it, not for power, it's for survival. When they see that you understand that, they trust you, but you have to be willing to prove it." Ethan watched Yarek closely, trying to comprehend the quiet wisdom in his words. "You've lived here, in the jungle, for a long time, haven't you?" Yarek nodded. "I've spent enough time observing, learning, but it's not just about spending time. It's about listening, watching. The predators, they don't trust easily, but once you show them you respect their space, their rules, their instincts, they'll let you in. I've been given that chance. Not because I'm strong, but because I understand that I'm a guest here, just like all of you." Aina's voice was quiet, filled with wonder. "So, they don't see us as enemies?" "Not anymore. No," Yarek replied, shaking his head. "Once you show them you're not a threat, they'll protect you as one of their own." The group fell silent, the weight of Yarek's words settling over them like the evening fog. The predators they had feared for so long weren't just beasts of destruction. They had a deeper purpose, one they shared with humanity: to protect, to survive, to ensure that the cycle of life continued. Ethan sat back, his mind racing with new thoughts. He had been studying animals his whole life, but this was something he had never considered. The idea that humans, with all their technology and knowledge, could be seen as equals by the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy was both humbling and awe-inspiring. The night passed quietly, the fire flickering and crackling as the jungle's sounds continued around them. Jarek remained near the cub, his bodyguard instincts never resting. Even for a moment, as the first light of dawn began to break through the thick trees, Ethan found himself staring at the sky, lost in thought. What would it mean for humanity? If they truly understood the animals, the predators of this world, like Yarek did? What if humans could become the protectors of not just each other, but of everything they shared this planet with? A deep bond had been formed that night, one that could never be broken. And it wasn't just between Yarek and the cubs, or the predators and the humans. It was a bond between species, formed out of mutual respect and understanding. And as Ethan looked around at his team, he realized something profound. The real strength wasn't in technology, weapons, or the ability to conquer. It was in the ability to protect, to understand, and to coexist. The real challenge for humanity was just beginning, and it wasn't about war or survival. It was about learning to live in harmony with the world they had so long feared. The predator's secret: the morning was calm, the air crisp with the scent of dew-covered foliage. As the sun filtered through the thick canopy, the team began to pack their things, preparing to move deeper into the jungle. But the events of the previous night weighed heavily on their minds. They had witnessed something extraordinary, something that no human had ever experienced before. A bond between predators and humans, one that defied the natural order they had all come to accept. The predators, creatures designed for survival and violence, had shown humanity their trust in a way that no one could have predicted. As the team moved forward, Yorick walked at the front, his bodyguard instincts alert. He kept his eyes scanning the dense jungle, but there was an unspoken calm about him, something that only the predators seemed to recognize. The rest of the team followed closely behind, but none of them could shake the feeling that they were now part of something much bigger than just a research mission. Ethan, still deep in thought, caught up with Yarek. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice filled with both wonder and uncertainty. Yorick glanced at him, his eyes steady. "Now we understand. We learn from them. The predators, they have something to teach us, but it's not about their strength, their hunting tactics, or their claws. It's something deeper." "Something deeper," Ethan repeated, intrigued. Yarek nodded. "They're not just predators, they're protectors. Their entire existence is built around ensuring the survival of their kind, of their cubs. But it's not just a biological instinct, it's a culture, a way of life." Ethan looked at Jarek, his curiosity growing. "But why do they trust us? Why humans?" Jarek's expression softened. "Because we're not just visitors, we're partners. In survival, we fight for what matters, just like they do. When they see that, they offer what they hold most precious trust. They don't do it because they're weak. They do it because they've learned that protection isn't a matter of dominance, it's a matter of understanding." Before Ethan could ask more questions, the ground shook beneath their feet, and the air suddenly grew heavier. Something was wrong. The team froze. A deep, guttural growl echoed from behind them, sending a chill down their spines. Everyone turned quickly to see a massive shadow looming at the edge of the jungle, its eyes glowing with an intense, predatory focus. The creature was massive, almost as tall as a building, with broad, powerful legs and sharp, gleaming claws. Its scales glistened under the sunlight, reflecting an aura of terrifying strength. It was one of the apex predators, a creature that had been known to wipe out entire squads of armed soldiers in mere minutes. But the bodyguard, Yorick, did not flinch. He stepped forward, his body tense but controlled. The creature's eyes locked onto him, narrowing, its growl growing louder. Ethan felt his heart race. He had never seen a creature this powerful up close, and instinctively he reached for the weapon at his side. But Yorick raised his hand, signaling him to stay still. The creature took a step forward, its massive body moving silently, as if it knew the land better than anyone. Yorick didn't retreat. He stood firm. "Stay calm," Yorick whispered to the team. "Don't show fear." The predator stopped, its massive head lowering as it sniffed the air, its eyes never leaving Yorick. There was a long, tense moment where the creature and Yorick simply stared at each other. The rest of the team watched in disbelief. How could Yorick stand there, unarmed, facing a creature that had the power to tear him apart in seconds? Then, without warning, the creature made a soft, almost imperceptible sound, low hum, something between a growl and a purr. It was an odd sound, almost comforting in its own way. Garrick slowly lowered his hand and took a step toward the creature, his eyes still locked with its. To the team's amazement, the predator didn't attack. Instead, it stepped closer, almost curiously. Yorick reached out slowly, his fingers brushing the creature's snout. The predator's eyes softened slightly, and its massive head lowered even more. As if acknowledging the trust, the team stood frozen, watching in awe as the predator, once a symbol of destruction, now acted like a domesticated animal in front of Yorick. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. How is this possible?" Yorick turned back to him, his voice steady. "It's all about understanding. We're not enemies. We're not here to conquer. We're here to learn, to protect, and to coexist." The predator let out a soft rumble, almost like a sigh, before it stepped back, its eyes lingering on Yorick for a moment longer. Then, with a final glance at the group, the creature turned and disappeared into the thick jungle, leaving nothing behind but the echo of its departure. The team was left standing in stunned silence. They had witnessed something that none of them could explain. An apex predator had chosen to trust a human, to treat him not as an enemy, but as an equal. Yarick remained calm, his posture relaxed as if nothing had happened. But Ethan could see the quiet pride in his eyes. He had done something few could ever dream of. He had bridged the gap between humanity and the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. "What just happened?" Anna asked, still in shock. Yarick turned toward her, his expression as calm as ever. "The predators don't just fight to survive, they fight to protect. And they've learned that humanity can protect, too. Not with force, but with understanding." As the team moved deeper into the jungle, their minds raced with the possibilities. They had come here to study these predators, but they had learned something far more important. It wasn't about survival. It was about connection. Asterisk, the predators. Secret, the jungle stretched endlessly ahead, its vibrant green canopy casting shadows across the group. Every step deeper into the wilderness seemed to amplify the sense of awe and wonder that hung in the air. The humans had come to study the predators, but they were learning something far greater. These creatures were not just killing machines, they were guardians, protectors of life, and had a wisdom far beyond anything they had ever imagined. Yarick led the way, his eyes scanning the dense undergrowth for signs of movement. The team, though still processing the shocking encounter with the massive predator, followed closely behind. Every now and then, Ethan caught a glance from the others. They were still trying to wrap their minds around what they had witnessed. "How is it possible?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How did that creature just trust you? It should have killed us all." Yarick's eyes remained forward, his movements calm and measured. "It's not about trust, Anna. It's about understanding. The predators know the difference between danger and peace. When they see that we're not a threat, they can relax. But you have to show them that you're not afraid of them. Fear is what leads to violence." Ethan, still trying to piece together the puzzle, couldn't help but feel a strange sense of admiration for Yarick. "So, they trust you because you don't fear them?" Yarick stopped, turning to face the group. "Not just because I don't fear them, I respect them. They've been here long before any of us, and they understand survival better than any of us ever could." The team remained silent, contemplating Yarick's words, but one question still lingered in Ethan's mind. But why trust us with their young? Why not just keep their cubs hidden and protected, like any predator would? Yarick's expression grew serious as he met Ethan's gaze. "That's the secret, Ethan. These predators, they're not just killers. They understand the value of life. They know that to protect the future, they must pass on the knowledge of survival. They trust us with their cubs because, like them, we fight to protect what matters, and they've seen that we're capable of that." The group continued walking, but now the jungle felt different. The air was still heavy with the scent of rain and earth, but there was a subtle shift in their understanding of the world around them. The predators weren't just creatures of instinct and hunger, they were part of a greater ecosystem, one where survival was about balance, protection, and respect. As they moved deeper into the jungle, the landscape began to change. The trees grew taller, their trunks twisted and gnarled, creating a canopy so dense that barely any sunlight could penetrate. The underbrush thickened, and the sounds of the jungle grew loud and more intense. It was as if the very heart of the jungle was alive and watching them. Then, without warning, the group came to a clearing. At the center of the clearing stood a massive structure, an ancient stone temple, overgrown with vines and moss. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls were carved with intricate designs, images of creatures, humans, and symbols they couldn't understand. There was a stillness in the air, as though the jungle itself held its breath. "What is this?" Anna whispered, her voice filled with awe. Yarek stepped forward, his eyes scanning the temple. "This is where the predators gather to protect their young. It's a sacred place, one they've kept hidden for centuries." Ethan's heart raced. But why hide it? What's so important here? Jarek turned to face him, his expression solemn. "This place holds the key to the predator's true purpose. It's not just about survival. It's about passing on the knowledge to the next generation. This temple is where the cubs are taught the ways of their kind." The group moved closer to the temple, their footsteps muffled by the thick foliage. The air grew warmer, and the sounds of the jungle seemed to fade as they entered the sacred space inside. The walls were covered in strange, glowing symbols patterns that seemed to pulse with an energy of their own. At the center of the temple, there was a large stone altar covered in offerings, small bones, feathers, and other items that seemed to hold great significance. "This is where they come to learn," Yorick said softly. "This is where the bond between the predators and their young is truly formed. They're not just taught how to hunt, they're taught how to live in harmony with the world, how to protect, how to respect life." Ethan stood in awe, taking in the sacred space. The predators weren't just survivors, they were teachers, passing down knowledge to ensure their species continued. They understood that survival wasn't just about taking, it was about protecting. It was about ensuring that future generations would be able to thrive. As the group walked deeper into the temple, they came to a large stone basin, filled with what appeared to be water. But it wasn't water. It glowed faintly, casting a soft, ethereal light across the room. "This," Yarek said, his voice filled with reverence, "is where the predators drink. It's not just water, it's a sacred liquid that connects them to the land, to their ancestors, and to each other." Ethan bent down, mesmerized by the glow. "It's beautiful, it's like nothing I've ever seen." Yarek nodded. "It's the essence of the jungle. The same essence that flows through the predators, and now through us." As they stood there, surrounded by the ancient knowledge of the predators, Ethan felt a deep sense of connection to the world around him. He had come to study these creatures, but what he had learned went far beyond simple biology. He had discovered a truth. The predators were not just creatures to be feared. They were beings to be understood, respected, and protected, and now humanity had a chance to prove that they could be worthy of that trust. Asterisk, the shocking revelation. The team stood in awe inside the ancient temple, surrounded by the glowing symbols on the walls and the soft hum of the sacred basin. The air felt thick with history, as though every inch of the stone was alive with memories of the past. The predators, who had been seen only as fierce, unyielding beasts, were now revealed as something much more complex, beings with purpose, wisdom, and an ancient connection to the land they inhabited. Yarek stood at the center of the room, his eyes focused on the altar. Ethan and the others gathered around him, their minds racing with the implications of everything they had learned so far. "This place is not just a shelter for the cubs," Yarek said quietly, his voice reverberating in the stillness. "It's a training ground, a place where the young are taught not just survival, but a deeper understanding of the world. The predators are not merely creatures of instinct. They are guardians of a delicate balance. Ethan could hardly believe what he was hearing. He had spent years studying animal behavior, but nothing prepared him for the complexity of the predators in this jungle. These creatures weren't simply focused on taking from the world, they were protectors, keepers of an ancient wisdom. Then, why didn't we know about this? Anna asked, her voice filled with confusion and wonder. Why have they kept it hidden all this time? Yorick turned to face her, his expression thoughtful. Because they've always been misunderstood. The predators have always known their role in the ecosystem. They are not here to dominate, they are here to maintain harmony. The sanctuary, this temple, is a place where that knowledge is passed down through generations. But why trust us? Ethan asked, his mind still reeling. Why show us this? Your gaze softened, as if the answer had been obvious all along. Because you're not just visitors. You're protectors, too. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For a moment, no one spoke. The team stood in stunned silence, absorbing the weight of what Jarek had said. The predators had trusted humanity with their cubs, not because of any obligation, but because they saw something in humans, something that mirrored their own instincts. They saw the potential for humanity to become protectors, to ensure that the cycle of life continued just as they did. Ethan's thoughts raced. What Yorick had said made sense. Humans, despite their flaws, had a natural instinct to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. It wasn't just survival. It was the understanding that life was fragile and needed safeguarding. But then, as if the universe had decided to test that understanding, a low rumble vibrated through the temple. The ground beneath them seemed to tremble, and the glowing basin's light flickered as if disturbed by an unseen force. What's happening? Aina asked, her voice tinged with fear. Gurek's eyes narrowed. He turned to the entrance of the temple, his posture tense. Something is wrong. Before anyone could react, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the jungle outside. The unmistakable growl of a predator, louder, more aggressive, cut through the stillness. The team's hearts raced as the growl grew closer. Yorick stepped toward the entrance, his eyes focused on the shadows of the jungle beyond. The rest of the team followed, staying close behind him. They had barely reached the door when the massive predator appeared, a creature unlike anything they had encountered. So far, this one was larger, its dark fur bristling with anger. It was a predator of a different kind, one that moved with purpose, as if it were hunting. But what was it hunting? Yorick, Ethan called, his voice shaky. What is that? Yorick's gaze was steady. It's a rogue, a hogi, predator. They sometimes break from the pack, acting on their own instincts, driven by something they can't control. The rogue predator's eyes locked onto the group, and in an instant it charged toward them, its powerful legs propelling it forward. Like a missile. The team stumbled back, panic surging in their chests. They weren't prepared for an attack of this magnitude, but Yorick didn't move. He stood firm, his body blocking the path of the rogue predator. The animal skidded to a halt just inches from him, growling low and menacing. The air around them was charged with tension. The rogue predator was massive, its teeth sharp and its claws extended, but there was something in Yorick's stance, something that spoke of authority, of respect that held the creature at bay. The predator growled again, but this time its posture was different. It wasn't an attack, it was a challenge. Yorick stood still, unwavering. He slowly extended his hand toward the rogue predator, his voice calm but firm. You are lost, but this is not the way. The predator's growl softened, and for a moment it hesitated, as if weighing Yarek's words. Then, slowly, it backed away, its eyes still fixed on the human. It turned and vanished back into the jungle, leaving the team standing in stunned silence. "That was incredible," Anna breathed, her voice filled with awe. Yarek turned to the group, his expression somber. "The rogue predator has lost its way. It has strayed from the balance, from the teachings of the pack. It's not the predator's fault, it's the result of a system breaking down." Ethan nodded, a new understanding dawning on him. This isn't just about survival, it's about balance. The predators aren't the ones that need to be feared, they're the ones keeping the balance. But when that balance is disturbed, they become unpredictable, Yarek finished, and dangerous. For the first time, the team understood that the predator's role in the jungle was far greater than they had realized. They weren't just there to survive, they were protectors of the ecosystem, and without them, everything could fall apart. Ethan turned back to the ancient temple, the weight of the revelation sinking in. The predators had their own way of protecting what mattered much, like humanity, but their method was tied to an ancient system that could be easily disrupted. And now the question was clear. Would humanity be able to step in and help restore the balance before it was too late? The true nature of the jungle, once quiet and still, now felt alive with a subtle tension, as if the air itself had changed. The rogue predator's departure left behind an unsettling silence that stretched across the team. Despite the calm that followed, their minds were heavy with the realization that the jungle, the predators, and the delicate balance of life within it were far more complex than any of them had imagined. Yarek stood at the entrance of the temple, his eyes scanning the dense foliage. The rogue predator had retreated, but its presence had lingered like a shadow in their minds. The team, still shaken by the encounter, looked to Yarek for answers. "What happens now?" Anna asked, her voice trembling slightly. Yarek took a deep breath, his expression calm but his mind clearly alert. "Now we understand the true nature of the bond. The predators are not just creatures of instinct. They are guardians of this ecosystem, protectors of the balance." Ethan stepped forward, his mind racing. But the rogue predator, it broke the balance. What caused it to act that way? Yarek turned to face him, his gaze steady. The rogue predator is not inherently evil. It's a product of something bigger, breakdown in the natural order. Something is disturbing the balance, and that is why it's behaving this way. The team exchanged uneasy glances. "What could be causing it?" Aina asked, her voice laced with concern. "The balance here is fragile," Yarek said softly. "The predators keep it in check, but something is threatening their ability to protect. There are forces at play, something beyond what we've seen so far." Ethan's heart raced as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. "Are you saying that the predators are trying to stop something worse than them?" Yarek nodded slowly. "Yes, the predators are not just fighting for survival. They are fighting to protect something that, if disturbed, could destroy everything." The jungle around them seemed to hold its breath as they processed Herrick's words. The idea that the predators, once feared as ruthless hunters, were actually protectors, guardians of a greater secret, was almost too much to comprehend. As the team stood in contemplation, the low hum of the jungle suddenly grew louder. The air became thick with the sound of something massive moving through the trees. Garrick's eyes narrowed, and he held up a hand to signal for the group to stay quiet. From the shadows emerged another creature larger than the rogue predator they had encountered earlier. This one moved with a purposeful, deliberate grace. It was an apex predator, its fur dark and slick, its eyes glowing with an intensity that sent a ripple of unease through the group. But this time, the creature did not approach in anger. Instead, it circled them slowly, its eyes scanning each member of the team, as if assessing them. Yarek stepped forward, unafraid, his movements slow and calculated. This is the Alpha, the leader of the pack. The creature paused, its gaze locking onto Yarek. For a moment, the jungle seemed to hold its breath. Then, in a slow, deliberate movement, the alpha predator lowered its massive head in a gesture that could only be interpreted as respect. Yarek extended his hand, and the alpha predator leaned forward, sniffing the air before carefully nuzzling his palm. The team stood in awe as the massive creature, a symbol of raw power, showed trust and recognition to a human. "This is the bond I speak of," Yarek said, his voice calm but filled with reverence. "The predators are not mindless beasts. They are part of something greater, a cycle that has existed long before we arrived. And they trust us because we are part of that cycle now." Ethan, still in disbelief, took a step closer. "But why? Us, why humans?" Yarek turned to him, his eyes filled with understanding. "Humans have always been more than just survivors. We are protectors. We protect what matters, even when it means risking everything. The predators see that in us." The alpha predator, sensing the team's uncertainty, took a step back, then slowly turned and disappeared into the jungle, leaving the group in stunned silence. The bond was real. The predators didn't see humans as just another species. They saw them as equals, protectors who had proven themselves worthy of the trust they had been given. Yarek looked at the team, his expression serious. "The true test is ahead of us." The rogue predator was a warning. Something is coming, something that threatens everything, not just the predators, but the entire balance of life here. We have to be ready. As they turned to leave the temple, Ethan felt a sense of urgency building within him. The predators had taught him something profound. The strength to protect wasn't found in weapons or force, it was found in understanding, in connection. And now, with the rogue predators' warning echoing in their minds, they had to act. Because the real battle wasn't about was about keeping the balance. They weren't just guests here anymore. They were protectors.